All right. Let us begin. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can't hear me? James? Might put the volume up. Can't hear us. Hello? Can you hear me now? Hear me now? Good? Higher? Right, I'll just shout. That's the highest we can go. So welcome to our ProductTank event entitled... Oh, it's on this slide. It's on another slide. There we go. Entitled How the Role of Product Management Will Evolve in the Age of AI, Web3 and Metaverse. It's so good to see all of you gathered here today. We've got a full stack of speakers today. I'm sure you'll be excited to hear all the insights they have for us. Just before we begin, a quick introduction into ProductTank. So ProductTank is the world's largest product community. It's by product people for product people. So if you ever want to speak at ProductTank, host or write a podcast or write about ProductTank, feel free to go on the link you can see on the screen below or contact one of us and we can help you out or get you in touch with the relevant people. So we have a Q&A section at the end of every single presentation. So we have around 5 presentations today. At around 8:15, we'll have a Q&A section. If you would like to put questions, it can be anonymous or non-anonymous. Please go scan the QR code or go on slido.com and enter this code. On the live stream, this link will also be visible on your screen as well, or you can put it on the YouTube chat as well. Cool. So our event today is sponsored by Intelligent People. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Chris for a quick note on an exciting event there taking place.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So my name is Chris Mason. I'm from Intelligent People. It's great to be sponsoring ProductTank again, and we do everything we can to support the community. So on that note, I'd like to talk for a brief time about our Partner Up Product Management Mentorship platform. So the first thing I'll say is it's a free service. So we wanted to build something that is valuable and accessible to everyone, regardless of background. It's easy to say that having a mentor is valuable. There's lots of data to support that. So people that have a mentor tend to be more confident, they tend to progress more quickly, they tend to earn more, and it's really rewarding for the mentor as well. So there's lots of good reasons to look for a mentor if you don't currently have one. So we've basically built it a two-sided marketplace. So on the one hand, we have CPOs, VPs product leaders, who are kindly offering their time for free to help people within the community. And on the other, we have people that are looking for a mentor. If you're interested in being a mentor, you don't need to have experience of actually mentoring people, but you do need to be a product leader who's led a team. And we have lots of resources on our website to help you structure the sessions and set goals and objectives so that both parties get maximum value from the sessions as well. Now, we launched in January, and we've onboarded about 120 product leaders in that time. It's a really diverse group of people, different backgrounds, different domain experience, different scale of organization. And people that are searching for a mentor can use filters to search for and find somebody that they feel will offer value to them. There's a more detailed bio for every mentor as well, so you can read about them and their experience and what they feel they have to offer. So if you're interested in offering some time to help people, and by the way, some of the mentors are maybe working with an individual person, meeting them fairly infrequently. Some of them are meeting 7 or 8 people, working with 7 or 8 mentees at any one time. So it's been a really overwhelming kind of response from the community. So if you have any questions about this, then there's lots of information on our website, or please look for me and ask any questions afterwards. And very briefly, I know we're under pressure here. So Intelligent People is a product management recruitment specialist. We have a permanent recruitment team. We have an executive search team as well for very senior confidential hires. We also have an interim team as well for product interims and also for fractional product managers. And we're seeing more of those. There's a bit of a trend with fractional work. So if you have any questions about this, about hiring, about the state of the market or mentoring, please come and look for me. We've also got Ben and Marnie from our product team in the room as well, who is, you can see them identifying themselves. So if you don't like the look of me, you can go and talk to Ben and Marnie instead. And our website is intelligentpeople.co.uk. So there's lots more information there. So thank you for listening and enjoy the talks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Chris. So moving on to our first speaker today. We have Daniel. Daniel is a globally recognized AI expert with 25 years of applying AI experience. He's UCL's entrepreneur in residence and the CEO of a leading AI company, Satalia, which was acquired by WPP in 2021, while he's also the chief AI officer. So Daniel is a serial TEDx speaker and has contributed to numerous books and articles. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Daniel for the topic of introduction and evolution of AI.
All right. I think I've got 12 minutes to squeeze a 30-minute presentation, so I'm going to speak very quickly. We're going to talk about AI, getting everybody on the same page in terms of what AI is and isn't, and we'll talk about some of the macro impacts that these technologies are going to have on society. So that's me, it's boring. When I build systems for organizations, they usually have three parts. Everybody's getting excited about data. They're building data lakes. I would argue it's not the sensible thing to do, but we've been hiring data scientists, machine learning experts to extract insights from data, hoping that leads to better decisions. It typically doesn't. Decision making is a completely different field in computer science. If you're old enough, it used to be called operations research. It's discrete mathematics. I would argue you need to start here first, figure out what decision you need to make, and then work out what insights you need to be able to make better decisions and what data do you need to make better insights. Anyway, if I build a system that I give data to and it makes a decision, and tomorrow I give it the same data, it makes the same decision, I have automation. And automation is amazing because we get computers to do things better than human beings. But does anybody know the definition of stupidity? Huh? Doing the same thing over again, expecting a different answer. I would argue that by definition, automation is stupid. By definition, it is not intelligent or AI. I know that everybody that currently touches this technology stack is calling themselves an AI company. That's fine. You get more funding, more clients. But there are two definitions of AI. The first definition is getting computers to do things that humans can do. It's a weak definition, but for the past decade, we've managed to get machines to recognize objects and images, to correspond in natural language. When we get machines to behave like humans, because humans are the most intelligent thing we know in the universe, we assume that that's AI, or we assume that that's intelligence. Humans are not intelligent. I don't have time to convince you of that. But there are two. The second definition comes from the definition of intelligence. So instead of using human beings as a definition of intelligence, there's this, which is goal-directed adaptive behavior. Goal-directed in the sense you're trying to achieve a goal, an objective. Behavior is how quickly you can answer that question. But the key word in this definition is adaptive. What you want to do is build systems that make decisions, learn about whether those decisions are good or bad, adapt themselves so that next time they make better decisions. And if I'm being totally honest and controversial, you don't see adaptive systems in production. Most systems in production are automation. The true paradigm of AI are systems that can safely adapt themselves in production. A little bit of a history lesson. This is Socrates before he drinks hemlock. So AI in the 60s and 70s was writing down lots of rules and trying to infer new knowledge from those rules. So if I say to you Socrates is a man and all men are mortal, I could infer that Socrates is mortal. It didn't really scale, it didn't really work. In the 80s and 90s, a new type of AI came along which modeled how brains work. This is the brain of a bumblebee. My PhD 20 years ago was trying to take the brain of a bumblebee and model it in a machine. Bumblebees have 1 million brain cells. Their brains can fit on the end of a needle. They do amazing things. They navigate 3D worlds and they recognize objects. They talk to each other. They don't handle Windows very well, but ultimately they're very smart creatures. And the question was, can you model 1 million neurons in a machine? 20 years ago you couldn't. You can now model billions of neurons in the machine, and this is what we call large language models. These brains are amazing at knowing things about the world. They're even amazing at telling you what they know about the world. They are not good at reasoning right now, and they are definitely not good at complex decision making. Use these brains to know things, use these technologies to then reason, make decisions, and then build systems that can adapt themselves in production. Most organizations are 1 million miles away from this. So more recently, instead of using definitions or technologies to think about AI, I think about AI through applications. And I think there are 6 categories of applications of AI. The first category is task automation. Now, this might be boring to AI people, but the fact is that using very simple basic algorithms, if-then-else statements, whatever, macros, RPA. You can replace mundane, repetitive human tasks by a simple algorithm that actually drives a huge amount of value. This deserves its own category. Content generation is obviously very exciting now. We can pretty much generate any content we want. I work for WPP. They generate a quarter of the world's content, so this is quite important to me right now. I won't go into details. The third category is human representation. So a few years ago, I'd be talking about deep fakes. I'd be talking about how we can use AIs to replace human beings that are in interface with things that look and behave exactly like a human being. What we can do with AI is that we can actually get them to represent how humans think, which again I won't bore you with right now, but building models, building brains and understanding how humans perceive each other, how they perceive content is very powerful. The fourth category is what we've been calling AI for the past decade, which is using machine learning to extract insights from data. Typically, those insights don't lead to better decisions. But what's really important about these technologies is they can explain why insights exist. They can tell you why, and you can learn from that to be able to make better decisions. Complex decision making is actually where you get your biggest win at the moment. Complex decision making, let me give you an example. If I've got 5 people that I need to allocate to 5 jobs, how many ways can I allocate 5 people to 5 jobs? 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, 120 possible ways. So that's factorial. How many ways can I allocate 15 people to 15 jobs? Don't say 15 factorial. Over a trillion possible ways. To expect a human to solve that problem, we are wasting our time. If you've got 60 people to allocate to 60 jobs, there are more possible combinations than there are atoms in the universe. Most of the decision problems that you're making in industry are these complex, infinite, exponential problems. They're either being solved by a human being or by an algorithm from the 80s. The sixth category is human augmentation. So again, a few years ago, I'll be talking about exoskeletons, cybernetics. I might even be talking about building a digital representation of you in the metaverse. One thing that we do with some of our clients, this is going to sound really creepy, but we take a large language model, we train it on all of the data of the employee, the email, the Slack, the calendar, and then we ask that digital twin, if I put you on this project, will you work well? If I put you on this team, will you thrive? So we can actually build digital versions of you to be able to make better decisions. Anyway, those are the 6 categories. I love them, not because I invented them, but because it allows you to navigate this complex world of AI safety and ethics and governance, what people are getting worked up about. The types of questions you need to ask yourself when deploying automation are very different when implementing digital twins of employees, where you can identify secret lovers and people who are going to leave the company before they know they're going to leave the company. True story. So this framework helps you actually navigate how to apply these technologies in a safe and secure and fun way. Just very quickly, you can't talk about AI without talking about the macro impact that these technologies have. You've probably all heard of the singularity. You're all AI LinkedIn philosophers now, I know. But singularity is a point in time that we can't see beyond. It was adopted by the AI community to represent the technological singularity, which is the point in time where we build a brain 1 million times smarter than us. I think there are at least 6 singularities that we need to be concerning ourselves about. I use the PESTLE framework, which if you've done a business degree or business plan, you'll have recognized this framework. But I think the 6 singularities are this. 1, the political singularity is when we no longer know what is true. So misinformation bots, deep fakes have not only challenged our political foundations and continue to challenge our political foundations, but they're now challenging the fabric of our reality. A few years ago, I'd be talking about how we used a machine learning model to learn the voice of a CEO, and we got that machine learning model to call up the accounts department and got them to pay an invoice. You all now have access to technology for free. With 3 seconds of somebody's voice, you can clone them. So I know people who are being attacked by their children, deepfake children, or peers, or whoever. And this is, I don't know what the world will look like when we realize we don't know what is true. The environmental singularity is, so consumption really does give people access to goods and services that enrich their lives. But we know that it puts pressure on our planetary boundaries. We know there are people that overconsume. I believe if we apply these technologies in the right way, you can halve the amount of energy that we require to be able to run the world. And I know that because I build systems that reduce carbon emissions by 20, 30, 40%. Social singularity is not my bag, but there are scientists that believe there are people alive today that won't have to die. AI is advancing medicine, it's monitoring ourselves, it's cleaning us out. A bit like a car, if we stay on top of damage, that car will never ever die. I don't know what the world will look like if there are people that are not going to die. Technological singularity is when we build a brain a million times smarter than us. I guess my community thought this wasn't going to happen for another 30, 40, 50 years. It's probably going to happen in the next 10 or 20 years. We don't know what will happen when we become the second most intelligent thing on this planet. When it comes, I would advise you to be kind to each other and just to look busy. Okay, that would be my advice. But if it does see us as a threat, then it will probably remove us from the equation. The legal singularity is when surveillance becomes ubiquitous. So we know that AI can monitor people, understand their behaviors, even manipulate them to benefit the company. And there are already regulations and structures in place to mitigate this risk. Economic singularity is my favorite singularity. It was coined by a very good friend of mine called Callum Chase. This is about job losses. AI is amazing at removing friction. And friction usually means human labor. And all of the projects I've done over the past 20 years free people up to go and do more interesting things. The concern is that at some point in the next 10, 15 years, we're going to free up whole jobs. And our economies can't deal with mass technological unemployment. And we might not be able to even retrain fast enough to get new jobs because AIs will take them. Now, I controversially think we should be accelerating towards this singularity. We should be automating the shit out of everything. And bear with me. So if we automate the production and dissemination of food, education, healthcare, transport, energy, we can bring the cost of all of those things down to zero. Imagine being born into a world where all of the things you depend on to thrive and survive are free. Everybody is economically free. People say to me, Daniel, what would I do if I didn't have to work? Work defines who I am. What would you do if you didn't have to work? I don't have to work. I've sold my company. I don't have to work for the next 5 lifetimes. I know lots of people who don't have to work. They're not sitting at home bored and depressed. They're using their time to try and contribute to humanity. What would you do if you didn't have to work? Travel, indulge in your hobbies, spend more time with your friends and family. If I keep pushing you, most people say the same thing, which is they want to make the world better. And I want to unlock as many people from economic constraints to make that a reality. So on that note, I'm going to stop. Hand over to the next person.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Daniel, for condensing a 30-minute presentation into 10, 12 minutes. Pretty impressive, pretty impressive. So now that we've learned about the evolution of AI, I think it leads us well to how we as product managers can use these new trends, UX, UI trends, to build better products. So for this topic, I'd like to invite Anthony. Anthony is by the way, the Slido link is still here if you want to ask questions. Anthony is a product designer and developer specializing in emerging technology. He's currently working on experiences that connect generative AI with the end user at Google Creative Lab. So without further ado, Anthony.
Thanks, Daniel. It was very inspiring. Can everyone hear me okay? A bit louder, probably. Okay, so yes, I'm Ant. I'm a product designer. My background is actually in designing toys and video games for kids, and I also did a bit of AR VR in the past, so a bit of a meandering path. But right now, I'm at Google Creative Lab, and I'm hunting for ways that we can apply specifically generative AI in product. And I want to take you through 4 shifts in the landscape of product that I've observed over the past 6 months, and I think these shifts maybe give us a bit of a glimpse about how generative AI is taking user experience and personalization into kind of uncharted territory. So without further ado, I'll start talking about my shifts. And the first one is this. It's a shift from using AI to recommend content to generate content. So we're quite comfortable by now with AI being used to recommend us content at scale. And it's been like this for, we've had this for about 10 years or so. The TikTok algorithm, for example. But in the not too distant future, literally just around the corner, we're going to see generative AI, that is AI that creates, text, video, audio, voice, all these things that Daniel mentioned, used at scale to generate us content. So, oh dear, I'm not used to these microphone things. To generate content. And it might seem like that's kind of obvious. We probably all tried ChatGPT Midjourney or equivalent, Bard. Anyone try Bard? So yes, of course we're going to consume a lot more of this AI-generated content. But on the other hand, let's not downplay the significance of this. It wasn't long ago that I, at least, assumed that a human being had to be involved to write a successful novel or, compose a #1 music track. So I think it's a big deal. And for me, it particularly hits home when it emerged, when generative content emerges into my daily life. And this is what happened. That's what this is going on in this visual. I was looking at some documentation for a open source library. I won't go into too much detail about what it was doing, but broadly it was a framework for helping doing the kind of reasoning that Daniel mentioned, getting AI to do that. And I think the reasoning that was happening was quite interesting. So this is the user query. Show me a picture of a beaver. And the reasoning is not Google search beavers and show the first result to the should I be Google search was not the reasoning. It was generate some, use Stable Diffusion to generate a picture of a beaver. Here's the beaver. And so, I think this kind of thing is going to become quite commonplace in our lives. Like more and more, we won't be directly consuming content authored by people or photographs or whatever. We'll have this layer between us and the internet, which will be generated content. So as PMs, what's going on here? Like, what's the advantage? And it's clearly that we could generate exactly the right content for our user, and this could really be really great for engagement, right? Exactly what they want to see, not the closest thing. But let's also consider, the pitfalls. One off the top of my head is what if we create echo chambers with this content? Or Daniel did a really good job of talking about these sort of societal impacts that we could see. As PMs, I think we're actually in a unique position to have a positive impact on these kinds of things, like keeping an awareness about us. Where are the risks? We're doing this thing in this product. It's really exciting. What are the pitfalls? What if we do this? When are we going to have the next mental health crisis created by social media, for example? What are the things that we could avoid? And so there's big potential for good if we can avoid those things. That's on you, on us. So next shift is from traditional information architecture to something that I'm currently, I call it perfect prose. You're probably all familiar with information architecture. More or less, it boils down to taking the data model of some product and translating that into UI or actions that are meaningful to the user in their current state. But this has been the crux of digital product since it started, right? But I think in the near future, we're going to have to contend with a new UX primitive. It's perfect prose, and that's like the written message, which exactly answers my query, or some voice, or some image, or some video, or some robotic programming, or whatever. An embodied character in the metaverse, or whatever. That's exactly what I need at that moment. It's composed of by AI from an understanding of my intent. An understanding of my context, and maybe some personal information that I've shared with the system, probably automatically. Right now we don't see that much evidence of this. I think the closest thing we get is the sort of chat interfaces of Bard and ChatGPT. But I think in the not too distant future we'll see domain-specific manifestations of this kind of idea of just the right generated artifact in the UX. When I say domain specific, I mean imagine if your product is flights, right? What is just the right thing, not the list of plane flights, but just that artifact, the right thing for that user. Or holiday lets, similarly, so I think that this is going to be pretty disruptive. So that's something to consider. Am I working at a company that's going to be disrupted? Could I disrupt my industry with these sort of artifacts? Something to consider. Okay, next shift. So on the flip side of perfect prose, which is kind of like the output from generative AI, I think we should also consider the input. Like, how do we get these kinds of outputs that are meeting our needs? So don't make me think to anything imaginable. This is a bit of a negative observation of how things are going, actually. The mantra of UX for the past decades has been, don't make me think, make it easy to use, make it clear what's going on. And now we see this proliferation of these sort of AI omniboxes that can do anything and everything. We have no idea what their capabilities are, where their limitations lie, what they know about me as a user. And so there's a huge amount of cognitive load that's heaped on users of generative AI products. Why do we have this term prompt engineering? Why is this a skill that we need to learn? Shouldn't these things just be serving us and doing what we need? So what am I going to say about this? Yeah, so coming back to chat again, I think that the chat pattern is, the main place we see this right now, but I think it's been quite successful because it allows the user to have multiple turns of conversation to hone in on their intent. It's not clear what to do when you go on to ChatGPT, right? But you can kind of figure out over time and chatting to the system that, we can do this and that, and this is better if I can clarify that way, I can get to what I want. And I think that's why it's so successful. But again, coming back to these domain-specific interactions, there are other ways to do it, I'm sure of it. And there will be ways in your products, there will be ways in your industries to do something that's not chat, but is similar, and again, could be very disruptive. And I think as PMs, kind of focusing on the users, their pain points, their needs, is one of the ways to help your teams find out what these things are. Okay, and my last shift is from known journeys to non-deterministic. So this is, for me as a designer, is the most worrying one, actually, in terms of how challenging things are going to be. In the past, we could always know where the user was in the journey, right? The journey could be linear or non-linear, but their state will be predictable and reproducible. This is what allows us to do automated testing for developers, or debugging, as PMs to do QA, or as designers to actually figure out what happens when and after what. But in a deep AI first product, we have no idea where the user's going to be, because they did actions that were not intended by the creators of the system, right? We think about some of the generative AI products that we have right now, so something that isn't ChatGPT. Think about the Google generative search experience. Search, we're familiar with that, right? It's a pretty thin experience, right? It's a thin layer in the funnel if you're acquiring people through search ads, right? But as soon as you add in this generative layer, the search generative experiences can become really complex. And I don't know if you're probably not familiar with it, but the idea is that you can sort of ask for something, you can have multiple turns of conversation, but the key thing I'm thinking about is that there's these generative actions after every turn of conversation. Take what you've come up with and export it to sheets. Maybe you want to ask this next, and other things, suggestions of things that can be done. And these are these are generated for this particular context, for this particular user at this particular time, and we can never get back to that. So yeah, as PMs, at least what I would be asking is, how can we ensure that we can have a high quality experience when we don't know where people are or where they could get to? And the answer, I don't have an answer to that, right? This is a new thing. I don't think there are any methodologies or tools that help us, unless I'm wrong. And I'd like to, if anyone knows of anything, like let me know. But yeah, like this is like where we're probably going to see a lot more of this, and it's going to be hard, and we need to figure out what to do. So that's like more or less what I've got. I'm just going to kind of try and wrap things up a little bit. I was going to say here. Yeah, so one of the things I've been trying to emphasize is like there's a lot of possibility with generative AI right now to influence UX and personalization. I've heard people describe it as like an opportunity overhang, right? There's like a lot that we know we can do and a lot we don't know what we can do. But like almost nothing is in the hands of users today, you know, apart from some of the big players I've already mentioned. So, you know, if you can deploy something in your product, you'll probably be first. You might disrupt your industries, and that could be a big deal. Someone else might be doing it. Be aware, right? But also, the other thing to keep in mind is that there's a lot of hype around this stuff. So be mindful of what is signal and what is noise. And then to speak a little bit about what I've been doing, like I find that it takes a lot of trial and error to find the nuggets of goodness when you're dealing with this stuff. At best, I would liken it to science, you know, experiment and observe. But at worst, it's like playing darts when the lights are off. You have just no idea what you're doing. So, yeah, and I think this is all going to be pretty disruptive. So, you know, I would not be ignoring generative AI. I don't think you are, but like, if you were thinking about it, don't ignore it. And that's everything from me. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anthony. For the next part, we have how to build products using AI more responsibly and ethically. And that presentation was to be led by Deepak, but unfortunately, due to personal reasons, he can't make it. But he has very kindly sent a video of his recording, which, yeah, quite dedicated, I know, which I hope works.
Hello, everybody.
Oops.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Deepak Parmanan. Today, I'm going to be talking about building fair and responsible products and evaluating ethics and bias in AI. Sorry, I couldn't be there in person, but I felt that I should at least get my message across to you. Thanks to the ProductTank organizers, Kunal Miani, and the others for giving me this opportunity. So, disclaimer to begin with: this talk represents my career journey. Does not represent my work at JP Morgan. All views expressed are my own and does not reflect of any of my employers, current or previous. So we'll talk about my work a little bit and the kinds of AI that I've built, what is responsible AI, how I've done this before. I'll leave you with some best practices, and if it is not apparent, just my views on why AI must be responsible. So this is who I am. I've been working for about 20 years now across 3 continents. I've done different kinds of AI, machine learning, natural language processing, and machine vision. And I've had quite a good opportunity to see the AI industry evolve over a period of time and understand how responsible AI principles work. So what is AI and what are AI products? So we talk about 3 kinds of products: free AI, AI inside AI first. And what's common and different across them is that each product has a different level of user effort required, and each product has a more enhanced use of the product itself. So for example, in AI first products, the user makes less effort, but the product does most of the work for them. It has much fewer features because most of the work is done on behalf of the user as well. So what are the examples of these products? Your enterprise resource planning systems, CRMs, those are very good examples of free AI products because they just let you do data entry, nothing more. Gmail, if you remember, let you write email in the good old-fashioned way. Now, if you recollect, it's able to now autocomplete sentences and phrases, which is, the AI coming into play. Alexa is a shining example of a AI first product, and the way to evaluate if a product is AI first, AI inside, pre-AI inside, is to find out if the product still works if the AI breaks down. Obviously, if the Alexa breaks down, then all you have is a black box. Gmail still works if you have autocomplete turned off, so it's an AI inside. But Alexa would just not is not a product if the Alexa itself doesn't work. So here are two kinds of AI inside products I've built. One using structured data, one using unstructured data. The other one is the AI first product I built at Microsoft using unstructured data. That's what we'll talk about today. This is simply to say that I've done this before in several ways. So what I'm telling you comes from experience, and hopefully this gives you a lot of value and something to think about when you go back to your workplace. So this is the work I've done. The product was called Puppets. It was based on the SwiftKey app, the keyboard app. If you're not familiar with it, it's an app that lets you type and type predictively. So this is a small video we made about the product itself. So I've turned on the sound for you. Enjoy this small video. So product worked really well. We had a 4.3 Google Play Store rating, and it was used for about 400 days by about 2 million users. So this is the standard AI/ML lifecycle. This is important to denote here because we have our 4Ds to build our product: discover, design, develop, and deploy. Similarly, machine learning also has a lifecycle, has stages to build in. What's important to know is data plays a key part here. Data preparation, data understanding are 3 key steps that you must do to do AI right. Whereas building the model itself, evaluating the model, and deploying the model are other 3 steps in the actual machine learning steps itself. So what is the responsible AI framework we used at Microsoft? So we used, what we did was we overlaid the 8 AI principles against each stage of the lifecycle of the AI ML. So we said that, okay, for each of the stages of problem statement, data collection, data annotation, modeling, and evaluation, how will we rate ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10 of being compliant or not being compliant across each of these principles? And needless to say, we did really well, not without our own hiccups, but the product was launched to great success. And this is what I would recommend you do as well. The machine learning lifecycle stages itself are not changing, they are the same, but picking the responsible AI life cycles, responsible AI principles, and evaluating each stage of the way, those are the key things that you must do in doing AI right. Okay, problem statement. So our product actually was a competitor to the Apple Animoji product. So in some ways, the job was a little easy in that we knew what the end experience would look like. So our job was to be as good as, maybe even better than Apple Animoji. So we broke down the problem rather than simply saying, oh, let's go ship an Apple Animoji competitor. We broke it down into 6 dimensions: who's using the product, which expressions are they doing, what devices, which characters, which apps, and how they are using it. So for example, the phone, the app was supposed to be used this way. You take the phone, you hold it to your face like this, you animate yourself, and you do the characters. Whereas people could also choose to hold the phone this way or the other way. Now the question became, how do we still launch the product with those edge cases as well? So we have to be mindful of these situations while we build the product. So when we try to look at human faces, we looked at all the options available to us. This is a well-known 68 face landmark. So we use 68 points to capture the faces of the humans. We could have done more, but we felt that this provided a very good balance between privacy and the accuracy of the model we used eventually. We also thought about humans. How should we represent them? They're the good old definitions of race, age, gender, RAG as they're called. So we decided to go with regionality of the person, not with the skin color. We decided to go with the groupings of the users, not their own individual ages. We decided to go with male and female and other characteristics rather than using more intrusive terminology such as gender assigned at birth, gender assumed currently, which though accurate, we felt was just too intrusive to the users. Finally, we had a decision to make. Who are we building the product for? Are we building it for the buyers of the product? This was at a premium feature on premium phones. So should it be for 25 to 45-year-old men who typically buy these phones, or 18 to 35-year-old women who typically use the feature or use the product? We decided to make sure it works for the users more than the buyers, and it stood us in good stead all the way. Okay, here is one example of how we describe the face. This is not exhaustive, but this gives you an idea of how much thought it takes to think about humans, their characteristics, their expressions, and to ensure that we get a very good experience out of them. So what kind of lips people have, what kind of eyes, their eyelashes, the retina, the cheeks, the hair, the teeth, the nose, all these are important to capture the human face correctly and hence capture the expression correctly as well. So here are some examples for you. We launched a paper as part of the release of the product. You can go take a look there. And what you're seeing here is our own developers trying out the model, ensuring and testing the model to make sure that the expressions were actually the same. For example, what people are doing there is A, they're expressing themselves, B, they're seeing how well the character represents their expression, and C, they're letting other people also opine and say how well they are able to review the expression and tell and explain to themselves what expression it is. For example, if this is me smiling, I'll record a video of a character smiling, I'll send it to you. You have to then tell me A, what expression I'm doing, and B, how well am I doing it, so that it's a two-way street. What I say is what you hear, and we both understand each other correctly. Here are some best practices for you. What I would say is, in terms of AI principles, 7 would be a good number. Google and Amazon, if I remember correctly, have 5 principles. Microsoft has 8. 8 are fun, but when you implement them, they're quite a bit to endure. I would say 7 is a good number. 2 principles I would explicitly state are benevolence, that we must be able to explicitly state who are we benefiting, and non-malevolence. So we must be explicitly able to state that we are not malevolent against somebody. Team structure should mirror the users, because if we're building a product for the world must be represented in the team. For example, we felt that we could have had more women on the team, could have helped us find more nuances about women's faces. Data collection is important. Data annotation is also important. So here are some best practices for you. Modeling was important. So we used synthetic data, but we used synthetic data very cautiously. When I showed you turning my laptop around, no real person would do that in my data collection, but use synthetic data to create those edge cases where people turn the phone upside down, sideways, so that the model was built accurately. Testing is important. You should test from day one. As much as possible, test independently, because you might have an incentive to get the product to work for you, but others may not have that incentive. So if you're not doing it already, test early and test independently. So I've done this correctly before on Microsoft, and what key themes about these two is that in these two companies, company 1 and company 2, culture was important. So Microsoft culture walked the talk. So they already had AI principles. They presented it to us for us to follow. We implemented them locally, and we were incentivized. For example, I was called to speak about the product, how well we have done, and help others in the company pick it up and go along as well. Whereas in company 2, the culture was completely different. Culture ate strategy for breakfast. That is absolutely true. So you can have all these strategies to build AI responsible principles, but if you don't have a culture that fosters risk-taking, innovation, and customer-centered focus, you wouldn't do much. And what I can tell you is, it's been 3 years now, 3 to 4 years now since I am not working there anymore, but they still don't have AI principles. And because they wanted to de-risk first, build later, the good old analysis and paralysis is not going to help you out. So you're not going to be perfect. There's no need to be perfect, but there's a need to start doing it properly, mindfully as much as you can, because you're always going to learn. There's always going to be scope for improvement. So why responsible AI? The way I look at it is that When we humans evolved, we developed three abilities: the ability to do, to think, and to feel. And as time progressed, we progressed because we were able to replace each of these abilities through other things. For example, the physical ability to do things was replaced with manufacturing. The disruption, though, was not very high because it is quite specialized. Only about hundreds of humans were replaced with this, and the concentration of money, therefore, was only among the 1% of the rich of the world. When AI and software came along, especially software, it began to replace the cognitive ability of the humans. For example, all the digitization, automation was able to replace the thinking ability of humans, all the mundane drudgery that we used to involve ourselves. And that software slowly began to replace the ability to think. And finally, if you've seen the articles these days of people chatting with LLMs, asking them for personal advice, and in some cases, I read an article where women actively chose an AI bot or AI robot instead of a human partner because they felt safe with it. So these are this is now entering into the era of AI replacing the emotional ability or the ability to empathize with each other. And that is a far more disruptive skills. Hundreds of millions of humans could be impacted with that. Consequently, the power is going to be even more concentrated with a few people here and there. So my take, pessimistically, historically, humans have learned things only by doing them wrong first and getting it right afterwards. But the question is, are we doing enough? Are we doing things right? So that even if we make a mistake, we have an ability to course correct and come back to where we are. So if you're not on the bandwagon for responsible AI, please think about this. You must, anytime you think about AI, it must be responsible AI. There should not be AI without being responsible. So what's my framework? I keep the same MDLC, problem statement, data collection, data annotation, modeling evaluation. I would keep beneficence, non-malevolence, and explainability of the model as three core principles. And you are free to choose among the remaining four. Another tip is, if you're already in the EU AI guidelines are quite clear. You can choose them to build out your responsible AI framework. The GDPR guidelines also are quite clear on data collection and data usage. Those are also good examples to use when you build our responsible AI life cycles. So that's it. That's my presentation. Apologies again for not being able to be in person there. But hopefully this talk was useful to you and helps you further on your journey of building responsible AI and building your own frameworks to build AI responsibly. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Fantastic. I hope you guys enjoyed that video about how we can build products more ethically and responsibly. For the next part, we have Sahika. So we've talked about AI, and now we're moving on to the next technology, which is the Metaverse. So Sahika will be exploring, through an innovative way, taking you into the Metaverse itself, about what the Metaverse is and how we as PMs can build products or react to this new technology. A brief introduction to Sahika. She's passionate about lives and livelihoods, and is on a mission to build bridges between the dream and reality, striving to present people and futuristic projects in an exciting and useful way, building technology for good, impact, and change. So she's the CEO of Vision 2030. So yeah, without further ado, Sahika, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Great. All right. Right, so let's liven it up a little bit with some talk about the Metaverse. I know that people have very mixed opinions, so I'm here to share my version of what I believe is the Metaverse, and hopefully we can talk a little bit about what we're doing. But I think most importantly, the first thing I want to start with is that there is a lot of unrest at the moment, right? The world is changing so fast, and if we look at the developments that happen in society when it comes to technology, we've had it pretty good. Like, we've had a nice, comfortable pace, right? People of different ages have adapted, right? People like my mum and dad, who I never imagined would be on WhatsApp saying, "Why have you changed your profile picture? What does that mean?" And, you know, they've adapted. I never thought they would use technology like they do. The pace of change right now is blowing everyone's mind. So you're either on the excited stage or you're on the fearful stage, because I think it's touching everything, right? So I think that the people in this room are probably at the forefront in terms of the roles that you do. I think it's quite, there's a lot going on, but I think the good news is that there's also a lot of talent that's going to be required, because it's not like they're looking for people with 10 years metaverse experience or virtual reality, right? So there is a huge opportunity as well, I believe, with the people in this room who already have a lot of the skills. We just need to kind of move into a different dynamic. So I'm here to share with you a little bit about what we're building and what we're doing at Virtual 2030. It really is reflective of a lot of governments and countries have a vision whereby they've set the vision, and during that vision, there's all sorts of achievements that they'd like for society, right? Whether that's we want people to lead happier lives, or we want low unemployment, or we want cancer to be, at 2%. These are big goals that have been set, and they vary around the world. The great thing is that when they were set, which was normally around about 2018, 19 was when they were starting to be set. It really was about the decade, right? This decade is the one that we're really going to make some changes to humanity and people. But it's very hard to envisage that, right? And especially with everything that's going on right now, it actually, I believe, will help us accelerate some of these ambitious goals for humanity and people, right? So I will just go through with you. And this technology that you're looking at is powered by Mobius technology. We are building in this environment, and I will talk a little bit about augmented reality, virtual reality, metaverse, and all of that combined. I'm happy to answer any questions during the Q&A. So what are the challenges right now? I think people's understanding is there's all sorts of terms being floated around right now, and I think there's some confusion. Virtual reality is associated with gaming, right? I watch my children playing games all the time, right? And for me, that was virtual reality until started sort of experimenting, exploring with how this can make an impact for industry. It is early days, so I think that is part of the challenge. There's a lot of information, but there's not a lot of concrete examples of how that can work for humanity and society and across industries. And there is that huge fear of unknown, and I touched on that at the beginning to sort of say, people are feeling very uncertain and worried about their jobs, about their industries, and how things are going to impact them. And we are seeing some of that. I did a TED talk in 2018 regarding that the last 10 years have been about being mobile first. However, the next 10 years will be about being AI first. And in that time, really, it was people were just starting to start experimenting. But there is this huge fear. And at that time, we didn't quite imagine that the job losses would be happening like they are right now. But I believe that some of those people do have some incredible skills. And these are soft super skills. And with some reskilling, people can really make themselves quite in demand and valuable, right? So there is this uncertainty, but it can be turned around. So you may have heard this term already. I thought it was quite amusing because the metaverse, as people know it in general, I feel like it's a bit meh, right? It is the avatars. It is, for me personally, I didn't really want to enter an environment where it felt a bit cartoony. I know in our last talk, there were some talks about the avatars and emojis and so on. That's great in certain use cases. But if I'm doing something serious, like talking to a doctor about my scan that I've just had, and he's about to tell me that I'm sick, I don't really want to be talking to half a body avatar and can't really take him seriously. So for me, I feel like that version of Metaverse is probably applicable in some cases, but that's not grown up enough, right? So what you're looking at right now, it is a combination. It's allowing the scale of things to improve, and it is geared for industries in a way which is you can carry on doing some of the things that you're doing, but exponentially, right? And we'll talk about some of these. So my version, and also, according to officially, the real metaverse is really it's a network of 3D virtual worlds focused on social and economic connection. Simple, right? It feels really simple, but ultimately it's to hold. Like in this room, we have a certain amount of capacity of people that can fit into this room, right? And then we'd reach our limit. If we had this event in one of these environments, can have 10,000 people plus, right? And that really is what we're referring to when we're talking about these environments. And as product experts here, I think you're in a unique position, really. You're very good at what you do in terms of, I've built AI startups, and one of the biggest challenges is actually trying to get the teams to understand what we're trying to solve. So I feel like put the tech to one side almost and understand the problem that you're trying to solve, or your business or your organization or your team is trying to solve, right? Whether it's healthcare, education, recruitment, whatever it might be, really try to understand that piece. And that process of imagination and creativity and really talking to the users and really talking to the people, that's really, I believe, is what's going to really set you apart from everyone else, right? If you do that part really well, product people who could do that and then try to convert that into what they need to, right? And again, you've got to also give your opinion, speak up. Like, part of innovating is being creative, and my teams used to argue like hell, right? So they would actually sit around a table. I'd have the UX team, I'd have the data scientists, the professors, the developers, the software engineers, and they would thrash it out. And I'd be like, right, this is what we're trying to achieve, right? I need to solve the problem of how do people in recruitment spend less time screening candidates and spending, hours a day talking to candidates. How can we speed up that part but not take away the humanity part? And they didn't know about the industry that we were trying to disrupt. So they had to sit around the table, and I said, just back up your opinion. If you have an opinion, say it, speak up, but back it up. And it was through those arguments that we'd have the most incredible breakthroughs, right? And I'd watch like the argument turn into, yes, let's try, let's try this with this. And, and it just came together, and it was such a great process to see. But everyone around that table needed to bring themselves into the conversation. And I think, the product teams aren't normally they're the doers, they're the ones that do the actual work. And I really want them to kind of speak up, because it's great having a vision, but it might not be able to be achieved yet, right? But there's parts that we can do, but we really need to kind of come together more to discuss that and thrash that out. So really research the industry that you're looking to solve and understand the issues, right? If there's, sometimes they'll come running to me and say, oh, it's amazing, we've got this to do this. And I'd be like, okay, so how does this get us closer to the goal that we're trying to achieve? And it didn't, right? It didn't. It was a gimmicky thing, right? It was a great thing from a tech point of view. We just got the avatar to do this. But for me, when I was trying to solve a use case, it didn't get us to that use case closer, right? We didn't solve that problem. So really understand that. And, there are so many big problems to innovate on. I think the pandemic definitely showed us how unprepared we were as a society, right? If we look at big areas like talent, education, and health, and these aren't going to be, no human beings involved. Absolutely not. They are very people-focused industries. But we didn't breeze through the pandemic. We didn't breeze through all of the things, right? There are still, despite all the innovation, despite all of the great companies in the world and the great brains, there is still so much opportunity to solve these big industries. and break the norms. You know, we are, all of us as human beings are very trained to kind of think a certain way. And it's almost like get back to being like a child again, right? A child really has such an open mind. And this could involve like researching in your free time. It could involve, you know, broadening your knowledge and understanding who is doing what and how are they applying it. And what if I changed that part and I applied it to this industry in this way? What impact could that potentially make? So really don't look at this is how we've always done it or this is what can't be done. Set your own rules and try to break some of those norms. And I think that's the beauty of imagination and creativity, right? And we all see the world differently, and that's a great thing when it comes to innovating. And that's, you know, going straight into the mindset thing, that kind of follows in with that. So learning, like understanding, like taking a piece that you're passionate about. With everything that's flying around at the moment, there are so many things, right? We've talked about AI, augmented reality, all of these areas. If there's something that really touches you and you just think, I am quite intrigued by this, then go ahead, like learn, take that into yourself, you know, to learn, because you will then set yourself apart from the next person and the next candidate, because you have kind of taken it upon yourself to get ahead on that. And commit fully to whatever it is that you're trying to disrupt and do. It is amazing how many people work at a very basic level. If you are the one that goes over and above, right, and I don't mean working 12 hours, 14 hours. Like sometimes you need to do that when it comes to product, as I'm sure you all know. But everyone in my team was, you know, no one was forced to stay in the office till a certain time. But they wanted to stay there, right? Because they enjoyed innovating, and the culture that we built was people were fully committed, right? And if you're not fully committed, that's fine, right? Go and find something else that you're passionate about, right? It's a little bit like if you're into sports, if you're into fashion, if you're into health, education, find your passion and do your thing in that industry, because it will feel so much more enjoyable, right? So commit fully and make that change. And back to Virtual 2030, what we're looking to do is really build impact in these environments, right? Like I said, we're not having people just wandering about aimlessly, running about like some of the ways that it's been done before. We're looking to build impact and achieve a goal. And whether that's when Kunal introduced me as making dreams a reality, what he meant really was, and I can explain that a little bit more, is we are talking about 2030. And if you look at, I'm working very closely with Saudi Arabia at the moment, and they've got such big ambitious goals. I don't know if many of you know here, but one of them is an AI-powered region called NEOM. And that's a $500 billion project alone, right? So we are trying to create, like, visually across the world, these environments, these areas, right, for people to transport themselves in there and feel like they are there. We're also trying to disrupt education by creating spaces in universities where things can be interactive, walls can be interactive, right? And we're doing this with partners, we're doing this with all the latest technology, and then we're also building within that environment. And we're trying to connect people to achieve outcomes in that. That's my version of Metaverse and virtual reality, is bringing people together in a way that has not been done before, right? So imagine if you could, from your home, no headset, just enter an environment like this and hear someone speaking or giving a demonstration or showing, right? In this, you'll see me, my face is in here, so the video is embedded in here. You'll see this presentation, right? This could be anything. And then you can also see me circle around and point something out, right? That immersive environment and the impact that that can make across industries is super exciting. So that really is what we're trying to do, is to create these magical virtual experiences, make an impact, and help people learn, from each other, and also learn about other parts around the world. I believe in borderless, right? So I feel like there was an astronaut, I went to the UN headquarters, and there was an astronaut, Ron, who spent 6 months out in space. And he used to look at planet Earth he used to just be by the window fascinated and look at planet Earth. And he just said it was so beautiful. It was just swirls of blue and white. There were no borders. Right, so for me, that's the sort of world that I would love to see. And I think this is where this type of technology can bring us a bit closer together. Right, thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last talk for today, we have Maria, who will now speak to us about the last technology, which is Web3. Maria started her PM career at a crypto exchange, Wirex, a few years ago, and has stayed in Web3 since. She's launched a non-custodial Bitcoin wallet, Noah, and has most recently joined Verisart as head of product. So hand it over to Maria.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So yeah, thank you everyone for being here, and thank you to the organizers for organizing this event. My question to you is, can you hear? Do I have to shout? Okay, I can shout. Right, so my question to you is, what do you think of when you think of Web3? Is it monkey JPEGs? Well, you're not entirely wrong, but we'll delve into the why of why that is a little bit later on. This one, incidentally, is called the Captain, and he sold for 740 ETH, which at the time of purchase was about $2.9 million. So what is Web3? It was actually coined in 2014 by Ethereum co-founder Gavin Wood, but it kind of entered mainstream usage in 2021, which you will know as the year of the monkey JPEGs. So I'll read this out. Web3 has become a catch-all term for a vision of a new, better internet. At its core, Web3 uses blockchains, cryptocurrencies, and NFTs to give power back to the users in the form of ownership. But in order to understand where this is going, we have to understand where we came from. So I'm sure you're familiar with this, but essentially there were several iterations of the internet. There was Web 1, which was static read-only pages. Essentially what it was is that the public was consuming content that was already available to them. Then we moved into Web 2 sort of at the start of the 2000s, which was interactive user-generated content, so reading and writing. The problem with this is obviously that the data that users were sharing was owned by platforms such as Google. And so therefore there is Web 3, which is the next iteration. Now, this is still to be defined. But there are some central kind of principles that we're looking at. So decentralized networks, community-owned, kind of everything is community-based. And there's individual ownership and monetization models. So you will be actually owning your own data and being able to monetize that. The Web3 landscape is very broad. So there's a lot of companies that are emerging now that are working across all different sectors. So you have decentralized finance, you have things like decentralized autonomous organizations, you have new forms of governance, you have new voting mechanisms, you have things like supply chain management, you have NFTs. But all of this is united with kind of some central principles that I was talking about. So decentralization, that's a big one. There's kind of no central intermediary anymore, and individuals will have ownership of their own data. Trustlessness, so you don't have to trust individuals or entities. It's more about trusting the code through like smart contracts and things like that. And obviously transparency. So the blockchain is a public ledger, meaning that all of your transactions, interactions are going to be visible. Of course, there's still anonymity because it's quite hard to trace who is actually engaging in these transactions. But essentially, that's all visible activity on the blockchain. So where do I come in? Now, you were promised a Web3 product manager, and you got kind of a Web 2.5 product manager. So I'm working at the intersection between Web 2 and Web 3, and I think that that's really where kind of continuity comes in. So we need to build continuity from where we are now to enter the Web 3 world. And yeah, as Kunal mentioned already, my background is working for WireX, for NOAA. These are kind of, this was all finance-based. So WireX was a custodial exchange. Essentially, we were offering a friendly user experience in exchange for holding the keys to your crypto. And then NOAA was kind of offering a friendly user experience for holding slightly less of your keys of crypto. So you had a little bit more control over what your Bitcoin, And then I entered a completely new world fairly recently, which is a company called Verisart, and what they do, what we do, is we certify content, both Web3 and physical on the blockchain. So it's kind of providing continuity for example, the art world, which is very familiar with principles like certificates of authenticity, except we're bringing this to the blockchain. So essentially, if you are a creator and you want your physical artwork certified, you will have a blockchain record of that. Likewise, you will have additional, additional avenues for, as a Web3 creator, to then prove that your work is genuine. So in this kind of time working in Web3, sort of, I have learned a lot. And a lot of this is about kind of the expectations versus the reality. A lot of people obviously think that in order to work in Web3, in crypto, you need to be a blockchain expert. And you really don't. I mean, you need to understand, I think some people have already been mentioning, you need to understand what the problem that technology is solving. So it's not so much about understanding necessarily how blockchain works, how smart contracts work. It's understanding the problem that they are solving for users. Likewise, about prioritizing execution of a strategy. I've read a lot of blogs and kind of thoughts of other Web3 product managers about saying, you know, you need to experiment fast, you need to deliver. It's basically being like in a feature factory. And to an extent, of course, things move very quickly in Web3. But at the same time, you need to have kind of the guiding principle. You need to understand why you're doing it and where you want to head up, like where you want to end up, right? Where you're going. Then there's the idea that you must actively participate in Twitter and Discord to understand your users. But of course, users are the central kind of, I guess, what would you call them? they're the principle of product management. You need to understand your users anyway. But I can promise you that it's not just sitting on Discord and yelling GM wag me at internet strangers. Basically, you just need to have multiple touch points with your users, understand where they're coming from, and of course, you will do so by offering the products that you do. And finally, that you will operate under extreme uncertainty. You will operate under extreme uncertainty to an extent because there's less data points for you to touch. However, based on your work in Web3, you will still understand certain benchmarks and then make decisions on the back of that. So very much, as I'm told, similar to Web 2. So what is the actual opportunity? The opportunity in Web3 is growing and it's massive. So obviously we had this big boom in 2020, 2021, but even so, there's a lot of investment that continues to go into Web3. And I think it was a recent Coinbase report actually that tracked that 52% of Fortune 500 companies have actually pursued crypto blockchain initiatives since 2021. So that continues to this day. And Web3 jobs continue to grow, product jobs in Web3 continue to grow. And the biggest opportunity, I would say, is kind of the fact that we're still at the very early stage. And you have a chance to make an impact and be here at the very foundation of it and bring your creativity, your innovation, and make that impact permanent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. So we'll take a 5-minute break to loosen your legs, get some food and drinks, and then we'll join here for the Q&A. There's a QR code for the Q&A as well if you want to ask any questions. So see you guys in 5 minutes. All right, everyone, we'll start our Q&A. If everyone wants to take their seats again. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. So thank you very much to all the speakers for your presentations today. I hope everyone found it helpful. For our Q&A today, so the Slido link, it's on the YouTube channel or even on the Meetup page if you want to still add some questions, have been put through. We also have another panelist today. We have Leonardo, who's a senior PM at Coinbase. So thank you, Leonardo, for joining us today. The first question we have today is, there aren't many Metaverse PM openings in the market, so how can I enter the field? I imagine this is for you, Sika.
They're coming. I think a lot of companies are still at the ideation stage with brands, right? So I believe that it's probably worth contacting various companies directly and just say that you're very interested. In the meantime, get yourselves up to speed on some of the courses that are available, and just try to do something, even if it's something really simple. Just learn and take that initiative, and then just try and network with people. So look up the events. Whenever I travel, I always see if there's any virtual reality or metaverse type events, and there always are, and just go along and meet some people. So you'll find that there are resources that are required. They're just not advertised as much at the moment.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Anyone else want to add anything? Cool. Thank you. One for Leonardo and Maria. As a Web3 product manager, how can I increase Web2 user adoption of Web3 features? I.e., how can we make people use Web3 features a bit more? Question for both of you.
So wait, so this is a Web 2...
So essentially, how can we make people increase adoption to Web3 features, or Web3 in general?
I think, like, my take on it, and I hope Leonardo will agree with me, I think that it's really about creating that similar recognizable experience. So definitely for... like, this is the sort of thing that I work in, right? Like the intersection between Web 2 and Web 3. It's about creating very recognizable flows from Web 2 and into Web 3, and trying to introduce elements of Web 3 in a very kind of familiar way, and making it as seamless as possible to make that transition and not scare people off, essentially.
Yeah, I agree with that, but Coinbase is built on basically two pillars. It's trust and easy to use. And easy to use is everything she said, plus, onboarding, all the experience needs to be great. There needs to be trust. So these Web2 companies took 10, 15 years to build the brand, to build the trust they have today. You trust Google, trust Apple, you don't trust any Web2 company out there. So there's a lot of trust involved that you need to build with your users. But something that people sometimes forget is just needs to be better. Like, the Web3 solution must be better than the Web2 solution. Otherwise, don't bother making it easy. Don't bother working on trust. You need to find the use cases where on-chain, as we call it, or Web3, is actually better than the Web2 version of it.
How do you build trust?
So what?
How do you build trust? Because you mentioned trust is a very important pillar. So
yeah,
how do you build trust?
I don't have the answer for that. I think at least Coinbase, I think we're doing a good job in building the trust on the brand, and we're doing many ways, such as investing in security, never being hacked. We fight for user rights, like in the US, there are major court cases going on right now, and spending a lot with lawyers and etc. for the community. We're launching an L2 that we want to open, and so I don't have the perfect answer, but it's a lot of community building the brand, make sure you're not involved in any scandal, all that kind of thing.
Perfect, thank you. A question now to Daniel and Ant, I imagine. In your opinion, what is going to be the role of AI in the gender gap inside tech and financial industries? It will help to shorten the gap or make it bigger?
Help shorten the gap. So I think that AI is good at identifying people who are best placed to make decisions, and they are also good at identifying the most diverse group of people. I know it sounds crazy to get the best people to make the best decisions. Usually decisions are made in hierarchies, but AI can essentially help you find those people, so it will essentially close the gap.
Yeah, I'm not very qualified to answer that question, but one thing I would say is that it has been like pretty bad examples of biases in AI models so far with gender. But on the other hand, companies like the leading companies like OpenAI and Google are putting a huge amount of effort into like safety and bias and alignment. So I think I read somewhere that, you know, like Daniel, you just said, I think in the future, AIs are likely to be much more unbiased than people, you know, so they will be better at giving equitable opportunity to men and women. They don't now, but I think they will, and that could be really amazingly different for that kind of thing.
Fantastic. A question for, I guess, everyone on the panel here. As product people, how do we keep up to date with all the things with all that's going on, AI, Web3, and Metaverse?
Well, attend things like this, obviously. No, but I mean, generally for me, I find that challenging as well, to be perfectly frank. And I think my biggest way of keeping up to date is reading as much as I can, listening to as much as I can, and genuinely attending events like this, because sharing and learning from other experts in the field is the best way to understand all of this, I think.
I think you've summed it up probably for everyone, but I think my advice would be like also get involved with some of the projects, right? Because people sort of automatically think that having a full-time job, you have to almost switch and get another job. And if you're lucky, then great. But just try to use your initiative, and even if you've got a friend or you've got someone in your circle that's working on something, get involved just to learn. And see if there's something that you're passionate about. And there is so much information right now, so no one is expected to sort of absorb everything and know everything, right? We've got to be open to opinions, and again, I go back to that passion. If there's something that draws you in, you know, maybe you're more creative and you want to go down the design route, maybe you're more into like, you know, how models are trained and data, right? And you go down the AI route, so that you can sort of find some of those things. But then try it, right? Try from your circle, and you'll be surprised. A lot of people have very powerful connections within their network. They just don't think to ask, and I would say just ask.
Yeah, for me it would be Twitter. But I'm half kidding actually, but you know, for crypto, for example, it's basically Twitter and Discord. You have everything, and I guess for every like new tech out there, you're gonna find these clumps of feuds, silos where people tend to exchange ideas more intensively. For crypto in particular is Twitter, but for other techs might be something other. But yeah, I would say, you know, find out where people that are actually building these things are, you know, exchanging ideas virtually or in person, and join these groups. And I think that would be my advice.
I think panels are meant to disagree, so I'm going to disagree and say not Twitter. And the reason why I'm going to say is because I think there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of people that are rebranding themselves as AI experts or Metaverse experts. And actually, I think there's only a small handful of people that really know what they're talking about. So my advice would be to try to identify those people and follow them. And you'll find them on really good quality podcasts and also very good quality newsletters like Exponential View. So actually, I would argue against listening to the noise that's out there, because I think that it's wrong, and try to find experts.
One thing I would add is there is a lot of information, like the question implies. Maybe apply some of your PM skills and prioritization. You know, which is the tech trend, the hotness of the day, which you think is going to make a big difference to you and your company, and think about that maybe more than other things.
Cool. Thank you. Next question. It's not always clear why AI gives certain outputs. What is the demand from users for transparency, and what do you believe are the obligations of a PM here?
Yeah, so this is a subject that's close to my heart at the moment. I'm giving quite a lot of advice to the government on regulation, and really that's the difference between software and AI. The only real difference there's a few differences, but the key difference is that some AIs are opaque in terms of how they make decisions, and we've got ourselves, like, I think, worked up about that. I think that where you've got an AI making a decision that doesn't have a material impact on people's lives, it's okay for it to be opaque. Where AIs are making a material impact on people's lives, then you need to make them explainable, and if you can make them explainable, then they're transparent, they're auditable, they're governable. So explainability is really the only thing you need to make sure that you do to ensure that AIs are governable. And I've got a lot of things that I could say about this. I think I'll probably just pause there.
I actually want to know how you can make an AI model explainable.
So how do you make AIs explainable? First is that you don't go to the latest shiny AIs and apply them. Try to be pragmatic about the type of AIs that you're applying. If you use very simple techniques, they tend to be more explainable. They might not be as performant, but they're more manageable, they're more maintainable, supportable, all of the things that actually matter to the business. So even some of the simpler techniques are important. And actually machine learning and neural networks are not always the right solution. If you use optimization or automation, those types of technologies are much more explainable. But I would advocate actually building explainability in everything, because it can help you understand the world in new ways that helps you make better decisions. You shouldn't just make them explainable to adhere to the AIUU Act. You should make them explainable because it helps you learn more about the world.
Perfect, thank you. Last couple of questions. There appears to be a huge conflict between the concept and use of generative AI and Web3. AI is hovering up all IP available on the web. Is Pandora's box open?
Sorry. I think that I think. So this is a really important issue to try to mitigate against a post-truth world. So I think that governments should be regulating and ensuring that any content that's created that gets pushed out there or popularized should be authenticated, and you should be able to determine its provenance. And I think that the way to do that is by having it on the blockchain. So I would like to see the blockchain ensuring that all content that we're engaging with is authentic.
Yeah, something to add to this is, like, people have this idea that you do transactions with crypto and you are anonymous out there. I don't think that's true at all. Like, everything is literally public. We do have literally teams that can trace transactions and see if there's, make connections with fraudulent groups or criminals or whatever. Literally everything is out there, and it's extremely transparent. And even you don't have an ID card attached to a transaction, you do have, you have all the behavior, where it came from, all the which exchanges the people are trying to use, and this leaves a trace that is actually way more transparent than Web 2, obviously, and then most financial transactions out there that goes through, the back office of banks. So when you consider that, if you want the transparency, if you want this kind of accountability, Web 3 is actually a great way to do it.
I would agree with that. And I think that one of the ways in which, one of the issues is that what we can do in Web 3 is not yet understandable to people in Web 2. So for a lot of it, it's about the user interfaces, right? So it's, I remember the first time I saw that I could actually, I knew somebody's basically Ethereum name service. I knew what they were using, and I could put that into a specific user interface, and I could see all of the NFTs that they held, all of their transactions, and it was about specifically the UI, whereas if I looked it up on eScan, or I wouldn't understand what it meant. And so it's about kind of having that transparency, but in a very understandable way, which is part of what I'm working on. So about verifying creations, verifying works of art, and making sure that people can see that these are authentic, because we're combining kind of the Web 2 understanding of what certifying authenticity means in a Web 3 world.
Thank you. Penultimate question. How do you measure AI feature success? What combination of metrics are you looking at, aside from the overarching business outcomes? Yeah. So if you're launching like a new AI feature, what are the type of metrics you use to judge its success? Apart from just the business.
Its ability to predict what you wanted to predict. Is it?
So, for example, if you launch a feature, would it be like increase in adoption,
like
number of users that sign up?
Oh, like a feature. I thought you were talking about like AI features.
So if you launch a new AI feature, for example,
we use different language in AI. So a feature is like a pixel.
I think here it means more like, I don't know, a new
all right.
sign-in page sort of thing.
How do you determine success of new AI feature?
The first startup that I built in 2018, that was interviewing people, right, to predict an outcome, like if they matched the company culture and if they had the values and so on. And I'll give you an example. There were 15,000 people that did the interview in 4 days per hour, like it was going on, right? It was a weekend and so on. They had about 280 people on that dashboard. The humans then got involved, right? Because then they had like a really good short list of people that were serious about that job and matched it. And they went in order of priority. They then went and interviewed them in person. They hired 15 people in 3 weeks. There was an outcome, right? So I think it comes with like set things that you achieve, and along the way you can dissect them and improve them and so on. But that was a very clear, right? AI has really made a difference here, because they said to us in a human way that we wouldn't even have been able to interview these many people. But they still did the interviewing, but they just did it with a different group. So the AI did make an impact.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. Like, AI is not new, really. You know, think about why TikTok is so successful. Why is Spotify so sticky? Because these products are brimming with AI, making them good. There may be like new metrics that specifically generative AI require. Like maybe it's about like quality of output or something like this, but I don't know how to measure that right now. So
imagine you were on the board of an Uber or a ride-hailing company, and you built an AI to try to set prices. That's a feature. Okay, great. And the AI has access to lots of data, and it realizes that when your battery on your phone is very low, you're willing to spend more money on your ride. So essentially, it's identified a vulnerability in you, and it's exploiting the vulnerability. Is that feature good or bad?
How would you measure that?
So the point is that you have an intended use. The intended use is to maximize profit. The AI achieves its intention, but it causes harm. And that's why it's important to make them explainable, because then the idea is that you could use the battery data not just to exploit people, but to prioritize rides, which is a good feature, or to remove the concept of a battery data so it can't be biased in its decision making. So the feature, the success has to be dependent upon the business goals, and also is it going to cause any problems?
Perfect. Last question. This is for everyone here, by the way. As a product manager, where do you start to increase interest and adoption of the new technology within your company?
I would start with the frictions that you have in your company. We've all got lots of frictions. I would list those frictions. I would figure out what are the right ways of solving those frictions, and then I would prioritize them according to some criteria that matters to you, like value and all that fun stuff. And then I would solve those frictions, and then over time start to build up your data lake. So I wouldn't start with a big data lake. I would start always with what problems you need to get solved and what is the right technology to solve it. Don't start with the technology. Don't start with generative AI. Don't start with even AI. Start with the problem.
Can you repeat the question again?
How do you increase adoption of a new technology within your company?
If you have a new tech in your hand and that's already determined, then it's definitely looking for the use cases that make more sense or have the biggest pain that can solve by the tech. But yeah, as you said, like if you're not starting from a pure user perspective, you have a technology that you want to implement somehow, it kind of narrows down a lot of how you explore the field, how you explore the pains of the users. But yeah, I guess it's kind of a standard answer of look for the biggest pains, looks for the largest amount of people or money or whatever your company impact, and don't be bothered by like using everything that the tech can offer, like just like blockchain. It can do anything, but who cares, right? You need to focus on the niches that specific technology can actually make a difference. Again, a little back to the previous questions, like it doesn't matter if it's easy to use or everybody trusts, it needs to be better. Somehow you need to make the user life better. So I'll try to focus on that.
I would say that accessibility and scalability is like one of the missions, right? So I think that when people are looking at problems, they are across industry, and some industries like retail may not have a problem, right? Their problem may be like, how do we reach more consumers, and how do we get more people engaged with the new model of like a Mercedes, for example, right? So it's trying to create like an experience, and if your company is doing that, then you've just got to figure out what is the status quo right now and what would it be great for. And also have more of a self-awareness. I know it sounds really, what I mean by that, I don't want to insult anyone by this, but what I'm saying is I was watching a friend going to a department store that's quite famous in London. She waited for ages, right, to look at a very expensive bag. And she waited and waited, and then she ended up leaving the department store to go to the shop direct. And they had a waiting queue, right? They weren't even that busy, but she was made to wait. And I instantly thought, if there was an environment that she could come in and just hold the bag, turn it around with her hand, zoom in with her body, look at it, open it up, just get more information, and then maybe speak to a live agent, and then like a human being, right, have an interaction, then go into the shop or even order it on like online or whatever it might be, she would be a converted customer. But at the moment, she's a lost customer, right? They've lost that customer. And that, again, we talk about pain, and that's something that's very close to my heart across education, across upskilling, all of that. But we sometimes just have a better way of doing things, and we have to look at what is it now. And also, it can't be so far ahead that it's not user-friendly, right? If you require someone to put a headset on and they're going to go and have a look at a £20 item, right, you've got to also look realistically of where that could add value. In some cases, it would be the headset, right, if it was someone operating and being taught how to do surgery. In other cases, it just needs to be accessible. So there are so many ways of looking at that, and don't be fearful, right, of trying, right? There's no such thing as failure. Like, try and see, because it is those snippets in that user journey which could be the gold. And if you don't experiment or try, you don't know.
It's kind of challenging to be like the fourth one down, because after everyone's already taken all the good answers. No. So I'm sorry for you. No, but I was going to say that I definitely agree with those points. And it's definitely like any internal or external technology that is being brought on board or being developed, it's about the problem that it's solving, right? And it's the pain point that addresses. And it kind of reminds me of this story. I was on a panel before, and there was this woman who was saying, nobody cares about Skype. Like, nobody cares about the protocol that Skype is using. It's about the fact that Skype enables people to communicate to each other. And it's the same exact thing with all of our technologies. So Web3 technologies, it's the same exact thing. It's about what problem is it solving and how is it making it better, as I think Leonardo was saying. Like, how does it make it better than the Web2 experience that people are facing? So any adoption of new technology has to be solving a specific user pain point and be better than what we currently have.
Yeah, like, obviously, thinking about the technology first is not the way to do it, as everyone said. In some ways, like, maybe a better question is what to do when your managers and their managers and CEOs says, we have to use this new trendy technology to do something, and you go, oh, okay, like, what are we going to do with this? Like, what do you do then? It's probably the same thing, right? Okay, you've been told to use blockchain. First, think about what problems what problems do you think that your users have that it could potentially solve an experiment. That's probably the way around to do it. No technology for technology's sake is basically the gist, I would say.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much, everyone, for entering your questions, and thank you for our panelists and presenters today. Let's give them a big round of applause. That's all we have for today. So thank you all for coming. I hope you found it helpful. There's still some pizzas and drinks left, I think. Other than that, we hope to see you next time. Thanks, everyone.